Okay.
Okay.
This really is, when I've said this one, it's truly my pleasure, but it truly is my pleasure to introduce my dear friend and fellow USC trustee, David Bohnett. We go back, we're like 30 years now. Anyway, David is a dedicated and generous philanthropist and technology entrepreneur. He's committed to effective positive change through community building and social activism. In addition to serving as chair of the David Bohnett Foundation, he is the chairman of the executive committee of the board of the Wallace Annenberg Center for Performing Arts. He is the vice chairman of the board of the Los Angeles Philharmonic Association, and he is a trustee of the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. Which, now these are my little notes, because I saw this on the TV one night. I'm watching the Kennedy Center Honors, and I see David sitting next to Julie Andrews. And I texted him and I said, "Oh my God, Julie Andrews is your date?" And he said, "Eat your heart out." David also serves on the boards of the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and of course, our board of trustees here at USC. Since 1999, the David Bohnett Foundation has provided funding and state-of-the-art technology and technical support to hundreds of innovative organizations and institutions that serve several very important primary funding areas. The Fund for Los Angeles, which supports a broad spectrum of arts, educational, and civic programs, including the Los Angeles Philharmonic, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Ciclavia, which is if you're ever interrupted driving around Los Angeles with the bicycle people, thank you, David. LGBT-related causes, graduate school leadership programs at the University of Michigan, UCLA, NYU, and Harvard. He also supports through the foundation voting rights and registration initiatives. Also, he supports research and public policies to reduce the toll, this is very cogent right now, the toll of firearm violence. He's also very active in the space of animal research and rights. Through the foundation, grants totaling over $110 million to date have supported the work of a wide range of organizations, including the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence, the Wildlife Alliance, ACLU, Equality California, and of course, very near and dear to our hearts, the David Bohnett Gay and Lesbian Leadership Fellows Program at the Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. The David Bohnett Cyber Centers are another major undertaking, and this is something, having known David all of these years, is very close to his heart. Currently, over 60 LGBTQ centers nationwide offer business, educational, research, and recreation opportunities to the local LGBTQ communities via access to the internet, which is so important in our underserved communities. In his professional career, David has long been a leader in the technology and information service industry. As many of you know, he is the founder and managing member of the early stage technology fund, Baroda Ventures. He also serves on the board of directors of several very notable technology companies. This goes back to when we first met. In 1994, David founded GeoCities.com, a media and commerce company that was once ranked one of the 4 most trafficked sites in the web. David, I'm looking out like so many people here in the audience were like not even born when you did that. So I'm going to inform you. GeoCities became publicly traded on NASDAQ and was acquired by Yahoo in 1999. And previously, David had been an active partner in xDrive.com, WireImage.com, Stamps.com, and LowerMyBills.com. He's also held various positions in the software industry for Legion and Goal Systems. But most importantly, near and dear to my heart, David's academic credentials include a Doctorate of Humane Letters from Whittier College, an MBA in Finance from the University of Michigan, and most importantly, a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from the University of Southern California. So, less to be said, David's many awards and distinctions include the Los Angeles Business Journal's Technology Leader of the Year, and Time's Digital Top 50 Cyber Elites, and Entrepreneur of the Year of Southern California. I could probably go on for another 6 days, but that was the abbreviated biography. So it is my wonderful pleasure to introduce up to give our keynote address tonight my dear friend and fellow U.S. Trustee, David Bohnett.
Oh my gosh. I can literally cut out half my remarks after that. And I will strive to do so and just stick with the jokes. But I talked to Amy and a few other people before the presentation and ceremony tonight about what would be most relevant to hear. So I'm going to go on just a little bit of my own personal journey as a gay man, as well as someone who has made their career in software and technology. And thank you, Amy, for that extremely generous introduction. As Amy said, I enrolled as an undergraduate student here. I was 18 years old. I grew up in the Midwest. I'd never been to Los Angeles. I'd never seen the school. And I came to USC because they had an early computer science program. And I remain very interested in the applications and programming side in the computer field. I joined a fraternity, but I was not out. I was closeted here for the majority of my time at USC. I was not out to my family, although I did escape to West Hollywood, where I found that I could go and find people that were like me and different and like me. So having that community to also be a part of during my years here at USC was extremely important, and it really reinforced for me as an 19-year-old, and then the drinking age was 18, which is great because you could go to the bars. So as soon as I was a freshman, I headed up there. But it did demonstrate to me the importance of finding our community or our various communities. I was happy and proud to be part of the USC community, and actually happy and proud to be part of my fraternity. But that wasn't completely fulfilling because of the time, the era, and also the need to find other people that were going on the same path. Just as an aside, I talked to somebody a couple days ago who was considering going to USC at the same time that I did. Now, I'll talk a little bit about USC later, but I'm extremely proud of our current academic credentials and ranking. This school is really remarkable in many different ways, including our academic standing across our undergraduate and graduate programs. But when I was here, and this other person said he had a meeting with the dean of students, and the dean of students said, our goal is we aspire to have an academic program that our football program admires. But as I say, now it's completely different. I did go on to the University of Michigan to get my MBA, and I did come right back to Los Angeles to work for Anderson Consulting, which became the firm Accenture. And I loved it. Someone's working for Accenture right here, I think, right? Or has worked for Accenture. I absolutely loved it because it was doing the work that I was passionate about and I was trained for. I was programming and coding and designing management information systems, financial reporting, general ledger systems for large corporations. I had a variety of assignments here in the Southern California area, and I really enjoyed the training from Accenture. I enjoyed going to different clients and determining what their management information systems need were, and then designing the reporting and computer systems, and then programming those systems to help them achieve their business goals. And my goal was that I would continue on to progress through my career at Accenture, and was someplace that I thought would be just a terrific place for me to have my career. And then 3 years or so into it, I wanted to bring a same-sex date to the Christmas party, and I was told that that was unwelcome. That, of course, I was welcome to come to the Christmas party, but bringing a same-sex date was not something that the firm would look kindly on. And then you have to make a choice, like all of us have at different points in our careers, is what do you do? I love that job, and I love that company, and it's turned into a really fantastic company. But I couldn't how do you, I personally, for me, I couldn't compromise. I had to then take myself off on a separate path and work for a series of software companies, as Amy mentioned, and that led to my progression in the tech career. But I was always happy and glad to have worked for Andersen Consulting and Accenture, and it actually was a very, very significant turning point when I had to make the choice to leave the job and the company that I thought I would be with for quite a long time. I began my activism when I was at the University of Michigan as a graduate student. I was enrolled in the full-time MBA program, and I had a financial aid package that included a work-study grant, and I looked at the list of jobs that you could get as part of the work-study grant, and the University of Michigan had the very first, what was called the GATE Program Office. It was a sanctioned program office as part of the Student Affairs Division of the university. It was headed by Dr. Jim Toy, and I saw, well, I could work there. And I didn't know what I would be doing, but I went in for an interview, and that's how I helped support myself through school. And I did a couple of primary things. I would be sitting in the office when students very timidly would come in and find out what it's all about. We would hand out literature. I worked as a hotline counselor for anyone who called that wanted resources for the local community. And then I went to Psychology 101 classes with a lesbian colleague of mine, and we would walk into this class and we would say, I would say, I'm gay, ask me anything. And this is a time when most students of that era weren't familiar with other gay friends and colleagues, and it gave them an opportunity in their psychology classes to ask questions that they would have otherwise. When I moved back to Los Angeles, I moved back to Los Angeles, took the job at Accenture, and then left and had my career in the software field. And about the same time, I met my first very important and significant relationship and lover, Rand Schrader. He was a lawyer. He went to Berkeley. He worked for Burt Pines in the city attorney's office as an openly gay city attorney, and he and Steve Lax were the first two openly gay judges appointed by Jerry Brown the first time in the 80s. And so we began what was a just wonderful, very fulfilling and rewarding, terrific life together as I was building my career in the software and tech field, and he was on the bench, and he was actually quite prominent here in the Los Angeles lesbian and gay community. He was one of the co-founders of the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center. I learned a lot in those years with Randy, and I learned also how significant and important it was to develop and respect our friendships with the women that were involved in the center at the time. There were women, of course, that were using the center services, and there were women that were in the center leadership. And through my experience with Randy and my exposure to the center in that way, I just saw how that collaboration with the lesbian community was absolutely critical for our future. During that time, I co-founded the GLAD Los Angeles chapter with Johanna Grama, with whom I'm still very close friends. And when I was at GLAD, I remember we were folding and stuffing envelopes, and we were around a table. And I remember hearing some of my fellow volunteers talk about their struggle as lesbians in the community. And I had a revelation that has stuck with me to this day that, oh my God, I'm a feminist as well. Not only am I gay, am I a gay man, but now I'm a feminist. I just remember the moment because it was a time when I realized that as they were describing their struggle, it was really our collective struggle. And I had to broaden my horizons as a gay man to understand that there was a wider circle of oppression and struggle that I needed to be aware of. In my professional and my social, in my personal relationship, we had very wide visibility, both in a social circle and a political circle and civic leadership through Randy's connections in Sacramento and in City Hall and county and city government. And it was a tremendously exciting, optimistic time. We had a home in Los Feliz, and we both had careers and a wide circle of friends that I thought was the trajectory again for my life at that point. And then he succumbed to HIV infection. And this was 7 or 8 years in the progression of our relationship. He was still on the bench and I was still working. But then, after a period of years and a very visible public struggle with HIV and AIDS, he was 48 years old, and he knew he was going to die. And at 48, as a matter of fact, he did die. We had been together for 10 years. I was 37, and what do? You know, again, life has dealt a series of blows that we don't expect. This was another one that I thought, this isn't what I signed up for. And, you know, you grieve. You grieve not only for your own partner, but you grieve at that point for what was a very, very collective grief, because I and many others had lost dozens and dozens of friends. You don't expect at 37 to bury so many friends and lovers. And it was an extremely emotional and difficult time. As a result of that, because there was no domestic partnership, there was no civil unions, there was no marriage equality, and that was way down the line, I was hit with very, very punitive financial penalties and financial taxes. I had to sell the house because I couldn't afford the estate taxes on his half of the house. And again, all this is now resolved with marriage equality, but back in the time, you know, and thank God I had the support of his family and my family, so I had hospital visits and, you know, all that, but there's just countless stories of friends and colleagues whose families prevented their significant other from visiting and being part of the hospital or part of the process. But very, very fortunately, I had the support of his family, and we were together till the very end. So I had to sell the house. I moved to an apartment, and I had a career in software and tech, so I knew I'd always be able to work and have a job, and I sort of regrouped. And I had always been interested in online connections, whether it was proprietary bulletin boards or BBS systems or early AOL, Prodigy, and CompuServe accounts. I just thought it was fascinating. And it really opened a window for me on how you connect with other people across any wide variety of interests, not just lesbian and gay, but anything you might be interested in. So I was, I had a modem and I had a computer, and I was always really, really interested in online services, and it was sort of related to my job. And then when I read about the World Wide Web, I was living in my apartment, and I just thought, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And it had the potential of being what I thought at the time was like this global AOL, this online service that does everything for everybody. Everyone's connected and interconnected. And I thought, well, I have to be a part of it. I wanted to be a part of it. And so I started a company called Beverly Hills Internet, which is an ill-advised name. And for any number of reasons. And we actually built a successful web hosting company very early on. But I was, there was a lot of opportunity there. I was not interested in web hosting as really a career, but I was interested in building community. And so I was trying to figure out how can we migrate this from our traditional web hosting business, and I was fascinated by webcams. And I was fascinated by the sense of presence that the webcams give you in terms of what you're looking and where you're looking. So I thought of this idea to create a series of communities named after familiar place names. And the place names would evoke the themes of the community. So we had, West Hollywood for lesbian and gay, Hollywood for entertainment, Nashville for country music, Rodeo Drive for shopping, Coliseum for sports, Times Square for theater and entertainment. And so I borrowed on the brand equity of these place names, and I had the idea of putting webcams in them, which we actually did for a couple of them. And then I thought, well, what else can we do? And I thought, well, we will set up a program to give away free web pages where people can create thematic content based on the subject of these particular neighborhoods. And people just flocked. We started, opened the doors, and started online. There are millions and millions of the most interesting pages created on every single subject matter you can imagine. And I was very proud of it, even in particular to today, because it was all thematic based. It wasn't selfies and self-referential. It was really people who were talking about sports and their sports team and dog breeds and finance and golf and music. And it was people that really connected with others on similar interest. And It was the largest validation and the largest user-generated content community ever. So worked very hard, raised a lot of outside financing, started in 94. We went public in 98, as has been said, and we sold in 1999. I did this as an openly gay man, but the investors were always nervous about that. And right before we went public, there was a lot of press and visibility. And one of the reporters from the New York Times actually got me to get to the real heart of why, where did the idea come from? How did you come up with this idea? And I said, as a gay man, I learned the importance of building community and connecting with others of similar interests. Well, that was in the paper. And these people were freaking out because we had registered for our IPO, and it didn't make any difference. I mean, it was a huge successful site, tons of traffic. The timing was very, very fortunate. So we went public, and I stepped aside. And then right at the beginning, I said, okay, now I have a huge responsibility to carry on the work that had been left behind by those that were lost. So as Amy said, I started the David Bohnett Foundation. I started my own private tech fund, Baroda Ventures, and I just set on a course to become, someone who could try and make a difference in political leadership and social justice, and laser focused on marriage equality because of how that had affected me personally. I joined a consortium of other tech funders to work on marriage equality in public and very non-public ways. I was the largest donor to beat back Proposition 8, which is what I call the setback that led to victory, that our defeat of Proposition 8 was a real wake-up call for our community. And one of the longtime program managers in my foundation, Paul Moore, is here. And I remember he was saying, like, well, WTF, where was everybody? Why, where was our community when we needed it? And so, as I say, it was the setback that led to victory, because I think it was a huge catalyst and a huge wake-up call for people like, oh my God, there's just all these people that want to go out there and take away or prohibit our rights for equality. So I continued to work very, very hard on marriage equality. And along that time, I was being, I'm an arts supporter, but I just thought there's plenty of people supporting the arts. There's not enough people supporting social justice, social service causes, so I sort of left all that alone. And then as I got more visible and active, I was approached more and more by some of these arts organizations, and I thought, well, if I can join these prominent arts organizations and be the bridge between social justice and their mission, well, then I will have matched both of those two things. And so when I joined the board of the Philharmonic and when I joined the board of LACMA, my whole goal was to ensure that those organizations reach the broadest possible communities. And I think that those groups have really done that. Recruiting Gustavo Dudamel, I think, was a huge move for the Los Angeles Philharmonic that I was a part of. Helping LACMA expand to other locations in Los Angeles and expand the programming to include art and culture from all communities in Los Angeles. So that was the bridge for me between arts organizations and social justice and social services. So, and I have had additional board service, of course, at USC, and I'm also continue to be on the board of AMFAR, the Foundation for AIDS Research. And I've learned a number of things from my tenure as a trustee, as well as from my fellow well-regarded trustee, Amy Ross. So that brings us to today, and sort of my ending remarks. And we, as lesbian and gay career people, students about to go on our career people, we really must broaden our focus to address the social, political, and economic inequalities in our society. We don't have the option or the luxury just to operate solely within our own community. We just, and many of us, most of us already do this, but I encourage you to really broaden your scope and your focus to take your talents and leadership and continue to fight for social justice for all. So there's three things that I kind of end with, which is, and some of these I've learned here at USC as my service as a trustee and our selection for the next president. And it's be mindful of the place from where you're speaking and how you want to be heard. So the acoustics of what you say, not just the content, but the acoustics of what you say and from the position you say it really matters. So be aware that you're being viewed through a certain lens, and that matters. And so pick, are you a boss? Are you a subordinate? Are you a lesbian? Are you an activist? Are you standing up for yourself? Are you standing up for others? The most important thing is to be aware from which platform you're speaking, and then choose the one that makes the most impact. And be aware of others and their reactions to your words and your acoustics. And then the second is something I've learned from my own self-examination, is there's a very wide spectrum of activism, very wide. And I take the AIDS epidemic as one, which is, I play, pretty much farther to the left. I'm out there. I'm very aggressive. ACT UP would be, something that is very, very, very far left. And then there's others that are on the right or the far right. So there's a whole spectrum of where people are comfortable they're going to play. So the important thing is to pick where your spot is, and you recognize that we need the continuum. We need the very radical activists, as well as we need where we all are. So if you're not radical, that's fine, but it's very important not to criticize the radical side, and it's very important not to criticize the less kind of visible sides. It's important to recognize that everybody finds their place on the continuum, and we all have to support one another. And then the third is, I went back to some of my notes. I gave the commencement address here at USC at the Marshall School shortly after GeoCities was sold. So that was almost 2 decades ago. And I was over at the Shrine Auditorium giving the commencement for Marshall. And they asked me, because I'd made a lot of money, and they wanted me to give to the school. And I was a graduate of the school, so I'm happy to do it. The speech is on the website, but I looked at my speech, and here's the final quote, which I think is also appropriate here. I challenge each of you to pursue not just financial reward or career accomplishments, but to pursue your dreams, your passions, your true interests. And if you do that with all your heart, I promise that financial success and career goals will take care of themselves. Thank you very much.